going in. Hey, Lawrence, how are you?
How are you?
We've got dinner if you're hungry.
Interesting. And it was that late.
Well, 2001, and then I think it was like 2000, 2001, and then by 2000.
Oh, it's a lot of luck.
Well, and ours, it depends on your perspective. As you get away from the square, ours kind of begins to lost a lot. They got replaced. And mostly houses though, so our downtown was never that big. A lot of houses. 2 or 3 blocks wide, north and south of through probably. Well, back it was the Exxon at the corner of Austin University and the Pond. That really upset a lot of people, and so that's what generated things like.
That's been here a long time.
I think they've sold to a new owner. Yeah, there are houses that were facing.
How are you? I'm fine. How are you doing? Super. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Sounds great.
So we're in official meeting. Y'all are in workshop mode. Has everybody enjoyed their dinner?
Good evening for those who are joining us virtually from Zoom. This is the July 8th meeting of the Historic and Architecture Review Commission. The workshop, which is underway now at 5:30, has begun. If you do have any questions about the workshop, please use the Q&A function and the chat functions in Zoom. We will start the regular meeting of the Historic Architecture Review Commission at 6 p.m. If you have any trouble getting into the meeting, if you need any additional assistance, please feel free to call the planning department staff at 512-779-3531, or you can send a text if that's easier for you. As soon as this workshop has concluded, we'll make an announcement and we'll ask the chair to open the regular meeting at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
We're very glad about that. I saw the house beside your office is selling.
Yeah, that's where I used to office.
Oh, really?
Broker to sell it to me whenever I.
Are nice.
How are you? Good.
Her building is cool. It's got that little
Well,
thing in front. And
so as we're kind of transitioning to
behind
here
you.
in person. Know if we're gonna be able to have a meeting or not. That's kind of the rule, and then meeting is that depending on. Well, and then we have, not as much here, a little bit with historic district stuff, but with the city. Traveling all the way down here.
Weren't there, but the parking garage.
San Jose, I talked to that.
I don't know that I know the name.
Okay.
I don't know that I know him very well.
I do too.
Yeah.
So it's called Recuerdos Mexicanos. The document that I think, could you remind me, who put together Recuerdos Mexicanos? Yeah. So we have a copy of it, and I believe there's a version online. Doesn't have a ton of photos of the neighborhood generally. Glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yes.
I said I'd bring it up to you.
So, I think.
Well, I put it on the
Historic.
board. Both sides.
Well, and that way our consultant can see it too.
I talked to the consultant,
Good.
we should do something. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, and what was been really valuable about the meetings is, asking people like, oh, well, my parents moved here in this year. But do you know about like what happened before that?
Right.
Like what, because I can get back to like the early 1940s. Oh, no, this was built in like 1926. How old the neighborhood is, and I knew it was older than I knew it was older than I know it was.
Yeah.
But I was trying to figure out like how old, or how long have people's families times when I look at historic homes, I have to look past what you can see on the front, and I have to look. That's a neighborhood where I have to. New neighbors.
Yeah, it's changing,
I bet.
you know, and there's no.
You wanna talk to me,
Right.
Say, yes.
Yeah.
It's
So they're
fine,
coming in
man.
with the right.
Can I? Early, and thank you for the pizza.
Our admin staff are the best.
One of the things that I had asked Myrna a couple, I don't know if this is because I asked. But I had asked if we could find a way. Zoom. So with that, I was wondering if we could just go around and say like.
And, area. President of Texas Municipal. Iowa.
What did you do for your municipal league? And
I was vice president of Nortec, sales and marketing. So there, it's in Garland, Texas. Called the Junior Chamber of Commerce. I was so young. Get to go to meetings and you get to.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Sharing a bit.
That's everything.
Welcome, welcome.
See you.
We're all having a party.
Yeah, it's really great. I don't know. I'm just taking it. Which we have just. Yeah, so when we first moved here. Anyway,
I
so,
have 1,000
you know,
best friends in Old Town. It's great.
after all that experience and being engaged.
Seconds
Yeah.
about, and then we gotta go back. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to move on up.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for those who have joined virtually for the 5:30 workshop of the Historic Architecture Review Commission. The Commissioner Curry, the chair, closed the meeting at 6 PM. The commission is now moving to the dais to begin their 6 PM meeting, and in just a few minutes, the chair will call the meeting to order.
Have
While we're waiting for Commissioner Walton to get here, I'll just give you a quick orientation to the room since we're glad to be back here in person. And for our audience members who are here, just share with you a little bit about how this meeting will be run before the chair opens it. We're glad you're here in person. We're glad to be back in person. This meeting is also being held virtually. So we're doing both an in-person and a virtual meeting. We don't so far have any speakers signed up virtually, and we believe most of our presentations tonight will be done in person. But for those who are joining online, they'll see the presentations from the podium. So they'll have a visual of the person who is presenting, both the applicant and Britton Bostic, our downtown historic planner. But the commissioners will be participating virtually tonight by voice only. So if you can hear my voice through this microphone, you'll also be hearing the commissioner's voice through the microphone tonight. So important that as we deliberate as a commission, that we, as the chair calls on you, it's clear to the applicant and to the virtual participants who's speaking. And we'd ask the same for well, if the public does choose to participate, that they state their name before they speak. Other than that, Madam Chair, I will be the recording secretary this evening. There are sheets in the back of the room to sign up. If anyone wishes to speak from the public, you'll be allotted your 3 minutes. Just bring that speaker form here, and I will make sure I get it to the chair. Madam Chair, it does appear that we have a quorum this evening, and when you're ready, we can open.
Is that better? Commissioners, I'm so glad to see you guys in person and here on the dais. It's just wonderful for you all to be here. And for the audience, thank you guys for being here. We can't tell you how excited we are to see you in person. So with that, it is 6:04 and we will move forward with our meeting. To start, Nat, would you mind calling roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Hyde.
Here.
Commissioner Curry.
Here.
Commissioner Walton.
Here.
Commissioner Johnston. Here. Commissioner Romero.
Here.
And for those audience members who are participating virtually, we also have two commissioners, alternative commissioners who are present, Mr. McCabe and Ms. Mitchell.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to our meeting of the City of Georgetown Historic and Architectural Review Commission. Commission members are appointed by the mayor and city council. The commission is responsible for hearing and taking final action on applications for certificates of appropriateness based upon the city council adopted downtown and old town design guidelines and the Unified Development Code. At this time, We will be considering the cases before us individually as follows. Staff will make a presentation of the case, and then I will give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions of staff. After the staff presentation, the applicant or their representative will have up to 10 minutes to present their project, followed by questions from the commissioners. Once staff and the applicant have addressed questions from the commissioners, we will open the meeting for the public hearing. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, please wait until the public hearing is open for that item. If you are speaking on an item in person, please fill out the speaker card at the back of the room and give that to staff. If you are speaking on an item from Zoom, please use the chat or the Q&A to let staff know which item you would like to speak on, and we will call on you during that item. You can also use the function, if you're on Zoom, to raise your hand when the item is being discussed, and we will call on you during the public hearing. Please clearly state your name and address. Each person that has signed up to speak on the item will have up to 3 minutes. A speaker may allot their time to another speaker for a maximum of 6 minutes. If a speaker wishes to allot their time to another speaker, please raise your hand and indicate so, along with your name and address, and to whom you will be allotting your time. Please remember that all comments and questions must be addressed to the commission. After everyone who has signed up has spoken, I will close the public hearing and provide a few minutes of rebuttal time to the applicant if they so choose. After that, I will ask the commissioners for additional questions to the applicant or to staff. Following this set of questions, I will ask the commissioners for a motion and a second, followed by deliberation. Then the commissioners will vote. If the applicant or a member of the public has questions or concerns following a vote on an agenda item, please communicate those to the recording secretary so the staff can follow up with you. Okay, well, with that, we will move to our first agenda item. Agenda item D, consideration and possible action to approve the minutes from the June 24, 2021 regular meeting of the Historic and Architectural Review Commission.
Madam Chairman, I move for approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, with a motion and a second, do I have any comments, deliberation, questions? Okay, Nat, would you please call for a vote?
Yes, ma'am. If I could also get the commissioners to use their microphone, that would be great. As I call the roll, Commissioner Johnston.
Here. Yes.
Sir, if you would, just the microphone, that way we have it recorded as well. It's just the green button there.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yes, sir.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyde,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Thank you, Nat. Okay, now we will move to agenda item E, public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade. Britton?
It's good to be back in person with all these buttons we have to push. Good evening, commissioners. It's great to be here. I'm Britton Bostick, the Downtown and Historic Planner. And so tonight, our first item is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade, the addition of a porch, patio, or deck, and replacing historic architectural features with non-historic architectural features at the property located at 408 West University Avenue. And so there are a couple pieces here. Harc's review is on the deck addition. There's a ramp and stairs on the west and south facades. And then there's also a screen deck addition, kind of on the southeast corner, some window replacement, and then the HPO request is for a paint color change. So I'll step through that. This is located at 408 West University. It's on a corner across from AutoZone, if y'all are familiar with that. So you can see here on the location map, you've got AutoZone just to the west. It's a couple of blocks from the CVS. And so there where Martin Luther King Jr. and Timber Street cross University Avenue. This house is a medium priority structure. It's on the very edge of our downtown historic overlay district. Old Town does not extend quite this far. That's the purple line that you see a little bit further on the right side of the screen. And so this is a historic home that's faced university for a long time and has kind of an interesting history. So as I walk through that, we began back in the 1879 plat. This was the homestead lot on the Dalrymple addition. That's kind of a funny name to hear in Georgetown, but that's where this comes from. And as you can see in the Sanborn maps, the house changed shape over time. It looks like it was built sometime a little bit before 1900. And it looks like by 1916, it may have already had a rear addition to it. By the 1925 map there in the middle, we see the house is kind of rounded out to the shape that we have today. And then you can see the same shape in the 1940 map with the front porch that we're used to today. But back in 1916, it looks like it had a different shaped front porch than what we have today. I would imagine that this is a Victorian period house that was kind of transitioned to more of a craftsman style around 19 teens. By 1964, it looks like the dormer addition at the top had probably already been constructed, and I can definitely see it here in the 1974 photo. So I'm not sure how much the house has changed after 1974. Here we have a photo of it in 1984 showing an addition kind of to the very far left, but you can see the front facade that looks fairly familiar today. That great front porch, the brick columns, the railings, and then this front gabled living area feature. What we can see from Google Street View in 2008 helps a little bit just to see the history of changes to the house. And so beyond the paint color change, some of the windows have been replaced, particularly that front window. So not all of the windows are historic anymore. Some of them have been replaced over time. A lot of the paint is needing to be upgraded. There have been a lot of repair and wood replacement that's been needed because of deteriorated wood members. And so that's ongoing right now. And so what y'all are, the request to y'all rather is for replacement of the windows and then a few additions. So here's some more current photos from the street showing there is some foundation repair work that's needed, and then also some cosmetic work, not too big of a deal, but some real repair work is ongoing with the structure as well. And then here's kind of the back view currently. And so the proposed site plan, what the applicant is looking to do is to add on a couple of porch areas. One is proposed to be to the rear of the structure, and that would allow for a deck area as well as areas for cooking equipment. There is a barbecue restaurant proposed to go in, so this house is converting to a commercial use. And so some of the improvements are proposed to be able to add a stair and a ramp to provide for accessibility to the structure to be used as a restaurant. And then also you can see a future patio identified there on the west side. And so here are the proposed elevations showing what those improvements would be. There's not square footage being added to the house with the additions. You're looking at some deck area that's got some screen parts. We do require in the city of Georgetown to have mechanical equipment be screened. And so some of the screening would accomplish that requirement. And then here you can see some additional, so this is the south elevation, what would face the back of the house, or what would face the parking lot that's proposed to go behind the house. So these are kind of a wood materials, provides a little bit of transparency, but not very much. Again, it's kind of constructed separately from the house and not as a full addition, but overall, it's an addition to the historic structure. And so you can see brick used for the skirting, you can see those wood elements. And then the windows are proposed to be replaced. So the windows right now are kind of a mix of old windows and newer windows. And the applicant is proposing to put in all the same windows to use like a white metal window style, but to have those characteristics that you see in the historic windows. But that way the windows can all be consistent and have a consistent appearance. So as we go back to the context, this is kind of right on the edge of what remains of residential structures along University Avenue. A lot of that has been transitioned to commercial structures. And so this is a residential property that's converting to commercial use. And then it would kind of blend through into the commercial structures, commercial uses that you see as you move to the west along University Avenue. And so when staff reviewed the application, we found it complied or partially complied with the applicable approval criteria. 2 signs were posted on the property. Staff has not received any comments either in favor or in opposition. And so staff's recommending approval of the additions as well as the window replacement. And so commissioners, as usual, you have options in your motion to approve as presented, to deny as presented, to approve with conditions. If there are conditions, staff would ask that you be specific about those in your motion. And then if there's a need to postpone, staff would ask what additional information might be needed to bring back to you next time. This is a public hearing, and so I do have a special slide for that. That concludes my presentation. The applicant property owner is present. And so you have the option, now that we're back in person, just to orient everybody. So I'm happy to answer questions. You're also able to ask the applicant if they would like to present or give any comments. And then once we open the public hearing, I'll put the public hearing slide up for our viewers on Zoom.
Thank you, Britton. Would the applicant like to provide any additional information? Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Lee McIntosh. I reside at 1019 College Street. I just have a couple of comments. I want to thank Britton for her time and efforts in helping us through this process. This particular structure was in very, very poor condition, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. I didn't buy it sight unseen, but I didn't spend a bunch of time on it. And what's going on right now is an effort to save it so that we can still call it a restoration, as opposed to what really might just be a renovation of a few structural components. But luckily, most of the exterior is salvageable. So our intent with this project was to try to take it back to what it was. The windows that we're proposing are not what we would like to do, but it's what we're able to do. They will match the original windows that were in the structure. Based on what we think it looked like in the teens. Britton touched on the history of this slightly. It looks like this was a shotgun house that was somewhere else, brought on the property prior to the turn of the century. Then a renovation was done to it, and then another renovation, and then another renovation. And as we progress through time, those renovations get poorer and poorer in their quality. But in any event, the windows will be a modern window that we need to meet the energy codes, but they will look like the original windows. The brick that's there, we don't think we can use, but we do know we can match it. So we want to take that match and apply it across the board in the structure, and then use it in some of the new structures. And the last thing I wanted to say is that the structures in the rear of the property are really, there's just two things. There is a walk-in cooler that you will not see, it'll be screened. And then there is a separate 12 by 25 foot screen structure, which also will just look like a fenced in area, although it will have a roof on it. And that's where the smoking will go on. We have to separate that from by fire code and for other reasons, we have to separate that from the main structure. And then we want to enclose it so that we can vent it properly and push that smoke up so that we do not bother our neighbors. And we have some experience in this. We've done it 2 other times in slightly different applications, but again, it's important to enclose that so that we can deal with that smoke. That's not I guess it's not an excuse for doing it, but it's a reason. Otherwise, we would just have that fenced and you wouldn't see that structure. I think really that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioners, what questions or comments do you have for the applicant or for Britton? right, no questions or comments from the commissioners. I'd like to open this meeting for a public hearing. Each member of the public will get 3 minutes unless another person signs up and grants their 3 minutes to the speaker. No speaker can present for more than 6 minutes. If a speaker is granting their 3 minutes to another speaker, they must indicate on their comment form at the beginning of the speaker's time. Do I have any comments during the public hearing?
Madam Chair, at the time we posted, there was no one who has signed up to speak. We do have forms in the back of the room. No one has indicated their desire to speak. I do not see anyone in the chat space or the Q&A of the meeting. So I do not see anyone else sign up to speak. If I could just pause in case, I don't see anyone else has joined us online. So I don't have any indication of anybody wishing to address the commission.
Very good. Thank you, Nat. Okay. If you'll give me just a second. Okay, with that, with no questions or comments from the public, I'd like to close the public hearing. And now I'd like to turn it over to Michael. He has one more question for us.
Britton, I think this is for you, and it's really because I want to learn something. Mr. McIntosh talked about the windows in the energy code. How does that align with or conflict with the design guidelines? And I'm just, it's an educational moment, and we can table it if we need to.
So this is something that we can definitely bring back with more full information. But the short answer is when you go to get a building permit, one of the required documents, especially for commercial buildings, is what's called a comm check. And it checks for compliance with the energy requirements. Basically, do you have the insulation and the energy efficient materials that you need in order to pass that requirement? It's by the state of Texas, so it's a state requirement that we check for. With historic buildings, that can be really difficult. Windows are one of the ways that you can increase your energy efficiency in a building. So our design guidelines don't speak particularly to that. And probably something, if the commissioners want to go more in depth, we'd need to bring back as an item that we can speak to more fully. That part of the process is something that's usually handled more in the permitting process and not in the planning department process.
Is it specific to commercial?
It also includes residential. So that's a res check, comm check for commercial, res check for residential. So the energy codes do apply in commercial buildings. It depends on the extent of the work that you're doing as to how much that would need to meet the requirements. But Mr. McIntosh is correct that energy code review will be part of his permitting process.
Okay. Put it on the request. I would like to learn more about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Britton. Mr. McIntosh, I'm so sorry. I misspoke your name. I apologize. Okay, with that, I would like to request a motion from the commissioners.
This is Commissioner Romero. I'd like to make a motion for approval of COA 2020-58 as submitted.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Okay, Nat, would you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes,
Commissioner Hyde,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
thank you so much. Okay, with that, we'll move right on along to item F. Thank you, Mr. McIntosh, for being here. Item F, public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness. Britton, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So this is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for new signage that is inconsistent with an approved master sign plan or applicable guidelines at the property located at 1201 South Church Street. Y'all will know it better as Tony and Luigi's. They're looking to get a new illuminated sign. And so this is what's under consideration. We'll go through a little bit of the history of the property. It's a bit relevant to the sign request that's being made this evening. They're looking to update their current sign with a very similar design, but you will see a change in color and then also a change to the illumination style. So again, this is Tony and Luigi's. It's kind of catty corner from the Little Caesars. It's at the corner of Church Street and East University Avenue. So this is in an area where Old Town and Downtown kind of meet, and we begin to transition into the residential areas of Old Town. This is a low priority structure, but it's got a longer history than it might appear to have. So in 1925, Martha Cody was, what I can tell, the first woman to plat a subdivision in the city of Georgetown. And she did this because she had inherited her father's property. He lived where this, approximately where this property is today, but he owned the whole block. And when he passed on, she inherited it. She lived just to the right or to the east, and her sister lived right next door. So the green two-story house next to the big white house, that's where Martha and her sister lived. She went by Maddie, and her sister was Luella. So this is one of the largest structures constructed in Georgetown that was not commercial up into this time period. The house started pre-Civil War and then paused during the Civil War and then took construction back up. And so we end up with a wood and stone structure, 2 stories with some really big porches. Judge Thomas Hughes was really well known in Texas politics, not just local politics, and had done really well for himself. You see in the 1925 map there in the middle that the house is no longer there, and that's when the property was platted. And then by 1940, you can see what are a gas station and apartments. So it is true that Martha Cody tore down her father's house to build a gas station and apartments in 1925. And so this is the only picture that I'm aware we have of the house. When I say it was large, this is just the front porch, and it was just the first floor of the front porch. So this is one of the structures that I dearly wish I'd been able to see before we lost it. This is a costume party celebrating, I believe, an anniversary of the United States. Everybody was dressed in 1776 attire for this party. And so special thanks to Ann Evans at our library for providing that photo. As we zoom in, you can see it was a pretty substantial house. It's kind of on an oddly shaped lot. Church Street kind of carves a little bit at an angle. If you're on Church Street or live near it, you're familiar with that. And so by 1940, we can see it's a little bit hard to read, but it's a filling station and then apartments. And so we know, though, that those were built by 1934 because our photo from Special Collections at Southwestern shows both of those developments. And so in place of her father's house, and then Maddie Cody's house is directly to the left of that red box I've drawn. So not a lot had changed by 1964. Except the uses began to change. So it was it's kind of a service station / restaurant. It was maybe a store at one point, and then I believe it was a car dealership, like a small car dealership, maybe repair shop at some point in time. And then by 1984, we can see Georgetown Motors there. So this is a little bit similar to the building that we see today, but had a canopy, kind of these Spanish details. This is not very usual for Georgetown. And so this is the apartments that were next to it. So they were built in the same style, this white stucco wall with the red tile roofs, which is really unusual. The apartments are where the First United Methodist Church parking lot behind Tony and Luigi's is now. So that's the lot that you're looking at here in this photo. And then the gas station was to the right. So the gas station lived on just with a new life, new roof slopes, stained white stucco, and that became Tony and Luigi's restaurant. And so the sign that you see on the left is the sign today. It's aged a little bit, has a little bit of wear. So the sign is not internally illuminated. It's illuminated by 2 external fixtures right now. And what the applicant is proposing is to do a new sign with a change in the colors to be consistent with the restaurant's brand colors, and then to illuminate the words. And so those 2 light fixtures would go away, and then you would have the Tony and Luigi's Restaurante illuminated and kind of glowing. If the commissioners will remember, this is a very similar illumination style to what was approved for 6 Whiskey. So we saw this sign many months ago, but this is exactly the type of sign that they're looking to do. And so basically there is a warm glow around the letters. And so the Tony and Luigi's would be kind of glowing around. Is it the front also? Or just the sides? The sides, so kind of where you can read the whiskey, but it's got a glow around the letters when illuminated. That's the same effect that you would get. And so that's called push-through illumination. So the sign otherwise meets size, location requirements. Our current design guidelines don't address this illumination style, which is why it comes to you. It would otherwise be approvable by staff. And so here's a picture of the building today. You can see the green sign there on the left facing University Avenue. And so when staff reviewed the application, we found that it complied or partially complied with the applicable approval criteria, and the partially complies is only because of the illumination style not being sufficiently addressed. So 2 signs were posted. Staff has not received any comments, and staff recommends approval of the request. I am happy to answer any questions. And again, when we go to the public hearing, I'll have a slide for that. And here are your options for a motion.
Very good. Thank you, Britton. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And the applicant is here from Affordable Signs if the commissioners have any questions.
Would the applicant like to say anything? No, very good. Thank you for being here. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant?
For staff.
Yes, sir.
Britton, I just want to clarify one more time. So this is just for the side and not for the front?
Yes, so the green sign that you can see on the kind of the left side of the building in this photo, the side that faces University, that's proposed to stay. This would just replace the sign that's kind of hanging on the roof edge. So same size, different color scheme, different lighting.
Okay.
Basically just an upgrade to what's there now. It's a little bit weather beaten.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. Nat, do we have anyone that would like to speak or ask any questions of the commissioners?
I have not received any requests to speak from anybody present in the audience. I do not see anyone on the chat space and have not received any requests from a text if anybody's having difficulty. So I do not believe anyone is signed up to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. You have only about 17 places to look. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. And commissioners, if you have nothing else, I'd like to request a motion.
I'll move to approve 2021-24 COA as presented by the applicant.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second, Madam Chairman. Steve?
Thank you. All right, with a motion and a second, Nat, would you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes,
Commissioner Hyde,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
very good. Thank you. All right, the motion carries, and we will move on to the next agenda item. Item G, public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness. Britton, back to you. Do
Written again.
you feel like you're on a game show?
This would be the best game show ever. Public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for replacing a historic architectural feature with a non-historic architectural feature at the property located at 1302 Vine Street. And so this is just a window replacement, although you will see a lot of work has been done to this house. So this is a house that began the restoration process quite some time ago. If you've been around Old Town, you may have noticed it. They have had to correct a lot of foundation issues. They've had to repair and replace some damaged wood siding and have done a whole lot of work in order to get this house to where it's been today. The reason that you haven't seen it previously is that the work has been repair, maintenance, and also kind of restoration-based work. What is coming to you today is the replacement of the windows. And so this is just south of Southwestern University at the corner of 13th and Vine. That sounds like kind of a fun address. This is just outside, about a block and a half outside of the Olive Street National Register Historic District. It's a medium priority structure and is surrounded by mostly medium and low priority structures. You see some high priority along University Avenue, and then also a few non-contributing structures. That just means that they're newer and not old enough to be considered historic. So this plat goes back to 1926 when the Coffees created the Coffee Heights Edition. This is something that y'all have seen before on another project, so you're a little bit familiar with the Coffee Heights Edition. This house was not constructed by 1925. We don't see it on the map yet, but by 1940 it was there. And so the Sanborn maps give us really good clues about the age of a house. It looks like it's in about the same footprint as it was back then with that big front porch. And so we see it was there by 1934 because we have, again, the photos from Southwestern University showing it there highlighted with the red rectangle. And so here's the back of the house. It's a little disappointing when the best photos I have are of the back of the house, but at least we know it was there and we can identify some of those characteristics from early on in its life. Looks like by 1964, not a lot of changes had happened to the house, but certainly a lot of changes to the neighborhood as Old Town began to develop and expand out. And then by 1974, you see most of the lots had been developed with just a few to the south remaining undeveloped. And so we have this great 1984 photo from the Historic Resource Survey, and big thanks to Liz Weaver for getting the updated, much more clear photo, so y'all don't have to see blurry 1984 photos anymore. The house did face, this is kind of interesting, it's addressed at 1302 Vine, but it really appears like it should belong facing 13th Street. So it a little bit faces both directions, and that kind of really unusual, but really spectacular front porch. The house does sit fairly low to the ground, and so a pier and beam house you would expect to sit up a bit higher, but this does have that concrete front porch. And so here you can see it in a before photo, before the work was undertaken. There was a lot of beginnings of structural failure for those columns. The wood was separating. There was a lot of cracking in the brick, and then some of the foundation had shifted, which we do tend to see in Old Town. And so a lot of that's been fixed and repaired. A lot of the work's been done. And so new paint colors. And now we're looking at the windows. And so what the applicant has conveyed in their letter of intent is that they got to a point in the project where they had hoped originally to be able to just restore the original wood windows. And because of some cracking and deterioration, they ultimately came to the conclusion that they would like to keep the frames and replace the sashes. So the frame is the big rectangle, and the sashes are kind of these square pieces that you can move up and down in the window. This is unusual because a lot of times we're looking at a request for full window replacement, and this is just for basically the panes of glass and the frames directly around it. So those are proposed to be vinyl to fit back in the wood. And then what's a little bit special about this one is that they have the original wood screens, and they're proposing to repair and repaint those screens and reinstall them so that you wouldn't get a very clear view of those new vinyl window sashes behind the screens. The screens are kind of intended to keep insects out and also intended to literally screen those windows. So that's what the applicant had wanted to convey. When we reviewed this, we found it complied or partially complied with the applicable criteria. And when you see partially complies, that's because the preference is to replace with wood since they were originally wood windows. And 2 signs were posted on the property. Staff has not received any comments, and staff is recommending approval of the request. And so again, your options for a motion. I conclude my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions if the commissioners have them.
Thanks so much, Britton. Is the applicant here? Do you all have anything you'd like to add? Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, do you all have any questions of staff or the applicant?
I do.
Yes.
So, Britton, they want to put vinyl in for the sashes.
That's correct.
Okay, so wouldn't we want to make a motion for them to, so that we clarify the motion to be sure to repair the windows, and then for the motion to be specific that they would repair the windows, that they stay the same windows with wood, and that the repair be with vinyl sashes, and keep that motion as clear as possible?
So because since some of what they're proposing is repair of what's existing, that doesn't require Harc approval. The only piece of the window that needs y'all's approval is the replacement of the sashes, vinyl for wood.
Okay.
And so they are fully permitted without any kind of special approval to do the repair. It's just this, I don't want to say it's a little piece, but it's kind of a little piece of the window that is particularly needing y'all's approval to move forward.
Okay, so then they could come back and put a vinyl window in there?
If they wanted to do a full vinyl window, so this is what's different, because normally y'all see the full window, the full
Right.
frame, it kind of comes as an entire piece and it gets put in. This is just the movable pieces. So, with a single hung, you kind of raise the window up. That piece that you move is the piece that would be vinyl instead of the wood. They've had some challenges since the foundation, and if I'm getting this wrong, y'all let me know. But my understanding is since there was a lot of foundation repair, and that shifted the house and that shifted the frames. And so there's just been a lot that didn't go as planned.
Right.
And so their goal, rather than to try to put all that back together and replace, was just to do a vinyl window sash, which would give them better energy efficiency overall. I believe they've insulated the house and made other improvements like that. And so the option they ultimately thought was the best for them to proceed with was just that minimal replacement of the material.
But there is a mechanism in order to catch that if they do have to replace the window.
Yes, and so they've been really great at communicating with staff what the plans are and how they've been kind of navigating some of the challenges. And so if there is a need to do anything different than what Harc would approve, anything different than the repair that we've talked about, and then the replacement that if y'all choose to approve that replacement is limited to the sashes, if there's a need to change that, then we can bring that back to the commission.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've seen that project go on for a while, so I'm very much aware of it.
Thank you, Lawrence. Okay, any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, with that, we will open for a public hearing. Nat, in your 17 devices, do you have anyone that would like to speak?
I feel like a DJ.
You do?
There is no one signed up to speak from the public. I do not see anyone in the virtual Zoom meeting, and I have not received any requests from our telephone line. So I do not see anyone sign up to speak this evening.
Very good, thank you. All right, with that, we will close the public hearing. And without any other questions from the commission, I'll request a motion.
I'll make the
I-
motion. Go ahead, Michael.
I make a motion, we approve 2021-26 COA as presented. And I also just want to add, this is a really interesting, creative solution. And I too have watched this project every single day I drive by it, and I'm ready for it to be finished.
I'll second the
Thank you.
motion, and I'm ready for it to be finished too.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lawrence. Okay, with a motion and a second, Nat, will you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyde,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
All right, thank you all, and thank you applicants for being here. Good luck getting it done as soon as you can. Okay, with that, we'll move right on to agenda item H, conceptual review of a request for a certificate of appropriateness. Britton, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm very excited to bring this conceptual review to y'all. So conceptual review is not an application that you would make a decision on in this meeting. We're asking for specific feedback for the applicant as they prepare to move forward to a public hearing. And so Harc has requested from staff that if there are any kind of large projects or projects that might be a little more complicated, that we bring that forward in a conceptual review, giving the commissioners the opportunity to view the project kind of earlier on, and then also have more of an opportunity to dialogue with the applicant about what they're proposing to do. And so this is the project at 1312 Elm Street. And that's not the right slide. And so what Harc would be asked to make a decision on in the public hearing would be the addition of a garage and living space, and then also a 10-foot setback for the garage. And so this is the rendering in color from the architect of what the house would look like when finished, including the addition. And so what I'm going to do is step through a little bit of the property history and hit some key points, but the architect is here and I'll leave it to him to give the presentation. There's a lot of really great information. And so this is located on Elm Street, kind of just behind First United Methodist Church. This is a house in a series of high priority houses that were all built about the same time period by Charles Belford. And so if you look at the houses, these three look very similar. They are very similar in style. They're very similar in materials, and they were all built around the same time period. These houses originally had the whole full half of the block. And so these were very large properties. Over time, however, they ended up being subdivided and then new houses built along Myrtle Street. And so you can see the houses here in 1916 and 1925. That's some of the first glances that we get of these in the maps. And you can see the houses haven't really changed shape a whole lot since then. So here we are in 1964. That was right before the properties were subdivided. And then by 1974, you can see that 4 houses were built behind the 2 big houses along Myrtle Street. So Old Town is really layers and layers of development and time periods and styles. So I was able to get some really good photos from the Texas Historical Commission earlier on in this house's life. It is a recorded Texas historic landmark. And so some of that documentation came from the Texas Historical Commission. And so this was built for J.A. McDougall, who I believe had a store downtown, and it's a Belford Bell house. So Charles Belford was a really notable builder in Georgetown. We can see it in 1979, and for most of its life, you see the house looks pretty similar. What I want to note in these photos is that you see a lot of decorative wood elements. You can see shutters, you can see these porch column posts, you can see kind of the beautiful details that we associate with Victorian architecture. Here in these later photos, you can see a lot of that was removed. And so I believe there was an intent at some point in time to restore the house. That didn't ultimately go through, and so you're seeing some current photos provided by the architect today. And then also some interior photos. So there's some really fabulous wallpaper still on the walls. There's some gorgeous wood floors and some really wonderful elements. There's also kind of some later bathrooms added in with some really, you can see blue tile there in the bottom. Those two bottom photos on the left, I'm going to point out, the architect will go back to this, but a lot of those wood pieces that we're missing are actually in the house. The house was kind of used as a workshop. And so here's the proposed site plan. The house does sit pretty far back off of South Elm Street. And then the additions that are proposed are to the rear of the house. The garage would be off of the East 14th Street facade, and then the living addition for a master bedroom on the ground floor would go on the back or northwest corner of the lot. And so here's that proposed first floor plan showing the garage and then the house as it kind of winds back into the back corner. And then here's showing the second floor plan. So a little bit, not a whole lot going on for the second floor, just kind of showing a little bit of how that would look. And then the additions are one-story structures, and so kind of keeping the height relatively lower, and then back to the colored elevation. And so here's the south elevation, or what you would see from East 14th Street. You see that new garage proposed there, and it would have a gable roof and the shingle siding. And then one of the features that I want to point out to the commissioners, there's a porch currently. It's not the main front porch. It's kind of a side front porch. And so they're proposing to enclose that and use metal storefront windows and use that as a sunroom. So I believe the goal of the windows is to be able to let as much light as possible and give that transparency. And then west elevation, you can see the master bedroom addition there on the left. So that's proposed to have the same roof slope and then to use the shingle siding, which is not a siding that you would have seen prominently as siding on this time period of house. It would have been up in the gables. So they're basically taking that architectural detail and then applying it as the siding for the new additions. And that's a way to differentiate those from the original structure, which has the lapped wood siding. And so some renderings as well. And so a lot of material for the commissioners to consider. This house is really quite an extensive restoration project. And so they're proposing to restore the windows, to repair and restore as much siding as they can. There are some beautiful stained glass windows, at least one, if not a few. They're proposing to get those restored. There's a lot of historic fabric that's proposed to be retained, restored, and then a few additions, so kind of a kitchen, living space that are coming kind of at the rear. And so then that sunroom is kind of really the most prominent change to the street facade. Everything else would kind of be pushed further back. And so here's the street view from Elm Street today. And then here's the view from the Elm Street and 14th Street corner. So as usual, trees get in the way of my pictures of historic buildings. On the setback, they're proposing a 10-foot setback modification. So rather than being set back 25 feet from the street property line, the garage would be set 15 feet back. That's pretty consistent with what we see for garage additions in Old Town, that garages are built a little bit closer to the street historically. And so we tend to see setback modifications for garages today. If Harc did approve that, it would still be very generally in line with other structures along 14th Street and how close they sit to the street. And so as staff did the preliminary review, we found that it complied or partially complied with the applicable review criteria. Partially complies, there is Because the setback modification would be needed for the garage, on the Secretary of the Interior standards, the storefront, I'm not sure is totally compatible, but I'll let the architect speak to that. And then the storefront again, on the design guidelines. And so when staff evaluated the request with the setback approval criteria, we found it complied or partially complied with most of the criteria. Some didn't apply to this one. And so what staff is looking for, and we can come back to this, but the feedback specifically is the proposed garage setback compatible with surrounding properties? Is the proposed living space addition compatible with the main structure? So that would be the addition of the master bedroom as the one-story addition. And then are the window materials proposed for the enclosed porch compatible with the style and character of the historic structure? So just as a reminder, this is an opportunity for the applicant to get feedback from the commissioners so that they can prepare their documents for a public hearing. And we're expecting that to be, the application was just noticed for the July 22nd meeting. So we expect this to come back to y'all in your next meeting for a decision. And so that concludes my presentation. As I said, the architect is here and I want to give him the opportunity to speak. He's also provided a presentation showing some of the details of the project that they're doing.
Thank you, Britton. Please come on up. Welcome. We're glad you guys are here.
I want to give the owner an opportunity just to say hi.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm Jim Golden, that's my wife Debbie, and as you can see, we've got quite a project on our hands. We bought the house back in January with the view of making this our, what they call it now, forever home. That and essentially joining other family members who live close by. I'd say we have a son who lives in Georgetown and a daughter who lives in Austin, and my wife's sister lives in Harc Heights. So that's what we're really looking forward to this. And I'll let Gary do all the detail work.
Well, I live right around the corner, so welcome to the neighborhood.
And so I've got the PDF right here.
Okay.
And then the PowerPoint also, just so you can click either one.
Oh, okay, cool. And the PowerPoint is the,
Is what was posted.
right. There was a, the application materials you had up in the, yeah. Yeah, that would be a good one. Okay, thank you. I'll just start while Britton's pulling up this other document. My name is Gary Wong. I'm the principal of Wong Architects. We are right on University Avenue nearby. Just want to thank the commission here. It is good to see you instead of over, I think it was Teams for a while there, right?
Yes.
And so it's really good to see you in person. I want to just thank you for your continued work over the past year and a half. It's been quite a year and a half for all of us. You got to meet Jim and Debbie. Just what a privilege it is to be working with them. Just nice people. They're going to contribute a lot to our community here. As we get going into this, there's a few things that are asks of the commission in terms of the project. And then certainly looking forward to your feedback. Zooming up about 30,000 feet, I think that from our side as architects, kind of one of the main things in play here are these ideas that we've been talking about in the academy for quite some time, and now finally seeing years later as a realization in life of aging in place. And I think that certainly we look forward to Jim and Debbie. Certainly they've been considering this. They're, here, go ahead. Yeah, they've been considering this the place where they want to land in kind of, I think they're middle-aged now, but they think that they're coming here to retire and live out their years. And so certainly with a structure like this of its historical importance, we put in a lot of time and energy into considering how we would make a place where people who don't want to walk upstairs anymore as they get older would be able to live. So one of the main aspects of the project is the addition of a master bedroom. And so being able to have master down is certainly one of the main components of the project. Oh, somebody's driving. Is that you, Nat? Oh, okay. Here, I'll let him drive for a second here. Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. So I'll leave it in this mode because I don't think I can go to full screen, which is okay. It doesn't allow that, right? Nah, that's okay. It's okay. What you're seeing in the three-dimensional model that we are showing here is more conceptual. The details are captured in the elevations, but this is a good place to start where we have the idea that there's this horizontal band that is on the facade of the historic structure. And what we're doing is in the question of we're always considering compatible yet differentiated. We have this horizontal band that continues around the house, and we're using that horizontal band to strike the top of what we're considering to be a connector between the old and the new structure as we add to this a master bedroom for the owner to stay in. You all know the project location. It is always worth noting that we've worked on and you've considered many corner lots, and it's important to consider in certain jurisdictions apart from ours, many times there's a different approach or an overlay for the requirements of a corner lot versus of just a infill lot. And it's just to say that it's possible that this is the consideration over time where it could be, we're trying to respect the character of the street. The most, if we were looking here, I guess I'll go through this a little bit, but you've seen these images already of the existing structure. It's certainly fallen under disrepair. There is this room here at the bottom middle slide that you'll see that it was effectively a workshop and a wood shop for the previous owner who we keep in touch with, and I'll share that with you in a moment, had a dream of restoring this house into its glory, and that is quite a chore, as you know. And so there is this room that houses a lot of material. There's some other rooms that are staging rooms for some of the columns and some of the railings and whatnot. This slide is showing within a 2-block radius of this site how different structures also seemingly observe that a tighter setback to the street. Site plan wise, we considered a number of different things, and I think it's important to share this. One of the most obvious places that we started with in considering the garage, which is one of our asks, was at Elm Street. And so if you see the lot here and where I'm waving the cursor, there was a natural place to put a garage on Elm Street that would observe the setback. But as you can see, what we're really trying to do here is set everything back, including the new addition, that it would be placed inboard at the furthermost corner of the lot, so that from Elm Street and from 14th Street, that the new addition would pay deference to the historical structure. And that's why it's located back here in the back corner. And so as a result, through discussion with the owner, we didn't want the garage to be so prominent, even though it certainly would be within guidelines to be set back here at the 25-foot setback on Elm Street. We chose to place the garage over off of 14th Street as a side street, saying that that's a less important street than Elm being the front street. In terms of windows, the owner, and we've gone back and forth with this because my initial instinct as a person who's trying to be budget conscious on their behalf was to do new wood windows, but the owners are actually quite committed to restoration of those windows. And so what you're seeing is that the intent is to restore all the windows around the visible portions of it. Britton pointed out and highlighted that we are making some additions here in modifications to the kitchen area. So we are proposing at the windows that are going to be new and adjusted that those will be new windows that are just at the back and at the addition, and that all the other visible parts of the home would be restored in terms of their windows. So you can see the way they're thinking about this in terms of aging in place. Their intent is that there is a master at the second floor that, again, I think they'll be able-bodied for another 50 some years. But in their minds, they're going to be transitioning from a master up to a master down as they age in place. Britton explained a little bit about this already, so I won't go through all of this. We did go in terms of the elevation. You can see here, we actually are keeping in touch with the previous owner of this home. He's very passionate about this house, and we're very appreciative of him and his time. And so we walked through quite thoroughly with the owner and tagged all of the elements here and located them. We had him walk us through the house, and so really numbering these things and tagging them so that we've got the best chance of restoration for this house. So you can see the rails at the porches, at the top here, at the circle porch. We certainly wouldn't even know where to start without the previous owner's support in this. And so he's kindly kept in touch with us, and we've kept in touch with him, and he's helped assist us through finding out where all of these parts and pieces go. So you can see here some of that rail. There's a lot of pieces. There's also a storage facility that the owners have inherited from the previous owner. And so you can see here that we made a trip over there as well and tagged the parts and pieces to be able to rehabilitate the structure. I know there's not action tonight, but certainly we hope to have your support. There's the last question of the element that is the sunroom. And that certainly was, and still is, in fact, with the owner, something that we've been discussing in terms of that idea of compatible yet differentiated. Certainly, I think that in the spirit of the intent here, that it is a porch right now and open. And so how do we create a sunroom intended to bring in the most light possible to that space? So that's what you're seeing in the reading of the design. But yeah, I think that we certainly hope and ask for your support on these items. The garage is certainly important to us. We kind of, let me go back to that. In terms of its location, trading its most obvious location which is along Elm Street for 14th Street. In my mind, urbanistically, was a move that's better for the street. And so we do hope to have your support for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We really appreciate you all sharing with us and being here. Okay, with that, we will open up to the commissioners to ask questions. And I think you need to leave.
I have to leave, so can I go first? I just want to say, I really like the look of this whole idea. I really appreciate the garage going in the back corner and the addition as well. I really appreciate that they're only one story. You have a beautiful house there to restore. It's kind of the ultimate historic preservation project, looks like, with all the materials you have to use. And it looks like it's going to be a really good project. My questions would be, what is the material going to look like on the siding of the proposed addition? And I know you talked about that a little bit, but maybe when you come back at the public hearing, you might have a sample. And also, what will the windows look like for the sunroom? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, as we go through this, I've noticed when we've done a conceptual review before, it helps if we do item by item. And so I think one of the first question, Britton, correct me if I'm wrong, was about the master bedroom. And so why don't we address that first, if you all have any questions on that, and then we can go to the second and third components after that.
Do you want to go down or just?
Just whoever, if anyone has questions or comments on the master bedroom addition.
I think my question's for Britton. Any future gotchas or risk to this project, given that it's in a historic district?
Meaning,
Anyone overrule or override or impose additional constraints, challenges for them after it comes through here?
oh, meaning it being a recorded Texas historic landmark?
Well, it's also in isn't that the Belfort Historic District?
Oh, it's in the University Elm National Register Historic
Right.
District. And so what that means is because it and its two best friends are so closely tied in style, age, appearance, and builder, we have a very special and very small National Register district just for these houses. That doesn't provide any kind of zoning specific to that. It's more of a recognition, and it also makes them eligible for tax credits under certain conditions. You have to be an income producing property in order to be eligible for historic preservation tax credits, but it's more of an official recognition than it provides for any additional restrictions on the property.
So no.
But it's a great recognition of that great section of Old Town.
Yeah. And it's not a question, but I would second the comments. This house needs love. And I'm glad that you guys have stepped up to do it. It's been that way for way too long.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, the master bedroom, or just anything you guys have, whatever you guys are thinking. Yeah, well, please, well, go before you go. Master bedroom. Anybody else on the master bedroom? Okay, let's move on to the garage setback. Okay, what about the windows on the enclosed porch? Any questions, comments? Yes,
So I
Michael.
would second Commissioner Hyde's request. You have lots of pictures of windows and other materials, but there's no reference for the sunroom windows. And the phrase storefront windows kind of is scary. So to have something
Certainly,
to
yes.
look at as an example would be helpful.
Yes, and storefront is it's a technical term that does throw some people off. There's two types. There's storefront and then there's curtain wall. Curtain wall implies glass that's taller than 10 feet typically and has its own structural support. So you can have historic, for instance, steel windows that are storefront. But I'll clarify that for our next meeting. Thank you.
I would just ask that when you bring materials next time, if we could see also the siding for the master bedroom and the garage, if we could take a look at that,
Yes, will
just
do.
to see what that looks like. Um, I am going to make a little bit of a comment on the day room. I I believe that that's going to detract a little bit from um, the aesthetic of the home. So I would not, I personally, or the way I would vote for that would not be in favor of it. And that's just because, you know, I've driven by that home many times and I think that's one of the nice features of the home. But so I probably would, I don't think I could vote for that. But then again, if I don't know, Gary. That's I don't want to take away from the individual's lifestyle. So I'm on the fence there. I'm going to say that outright because I don't believe that um, I should have the sole purpose of it. That's why there's other commissioners here. But I kind of feel that that might detract from it. So that's I just want to put that out there for you.
And just the sunroom you're talking about.
That's the
right?
sunroom,
To
yeah.
clarify. Thank you.
And that's just because I think it's great that you bought the home and everything, but I think that's kind of going to be detract from it. I've seen other sunrooms that are on some of the homes here, and I think that that kind of detracts from the front of the home. If it was in the back, I would say, hey, yeah, that'd be great, you know. But I'm just going to put that out there for you since it's conceptual. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you,
And that's it.
Prince. Okay, I have a couple of comments. Living near the home, I am thrilled and so excited that you guys are taking this on. It's amazing. It's, even though you can tell work has been done, attempted on it, it definitely needs a more energetic crew maybe. So I'm really excited about that. The sunroom, I do think if there's a way, you know, I'm no architect nor designer, but oftentimes maybe that's a little broad. Sometimes you see sunrooms and windows that look almost like they're not there because they're so beautifully designed. So if there was some way to show that, maybe it would help everyone feel a little more comfortable about that. And that's all I have. I think it's wonderful. Do any of the commissioners have other comments or questions at this time?
No, you know, I've been here for 12 years and I've watched that house. So I really am so happy that you guys bought it. And I'm so happy to see that the gentleman saved all of that molding and everything for that house. So I'm really happy that you all are taking that on.
Very good. Okay, well, I think that's all we have at this time. Thank you all so much for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Britton, I think that's all you need from your end for a conceptual review.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item I, updates, commissioner questions and comments. Sophia, are you handling that, or Nat or Britton? One of you guys? Okay.
So design guidelines are going to City Council next Tuesday for a public hearing and first reading. So we're getting very close to the end of that project. We are anticipating, we're looking forward to council's direction in that meeting, but we're probably looking forward to the design guidelines becoming effective on September 1st. So it won't be immediate. We'll give a little bit of time for everybody to transition. And so you'll start seeing those applied probably most likely in applications submitted after September 1st of this year. So that'll give staff time to get that all up on the web, make sure we're working with our applicants to give them that heads up and get everybody transitioned, but we're very excited. Otherwise, I'll echo everybody else's sentiments. Thanks so much for coming and being in person. We're thrilled to be here. And if you have any questions for staff, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll see y'all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much. Okay, just a few things from my end. Commissioners, I'm going to attend the council meeting just to support our staff as they present the design guidelines. So if anyone would like to attend with me, I think that would be awesome. If you can't, I totally get it. Robert and Pam, our alternates, thank you guys so much for being here and sitting and supporting. Okay, I think that will be it. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Nat, will you please call for a vote?
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Very nice meeting.
Thank you all for being here.
We did it.